Okay, so now I am going to take you through your Unit 2 Outcome 1 folio process that you should have completed by the third week of Term 4. And this is what you will submit. I'm going to be going through exactly what your process should involve, how you should be linking the sections and using your inspiration, and how you should be developing your final artwork. So obviously for the first section we started with our brainstorm. Here I have posted a brainstorm, and this example will be focused showing you how you use one theme and conceptual possibilities to then develop your next possibilities and develop a final artwork. So this theme here is looking at culture. It's then looking at self-identity and exploring how nationality, friendship, food, music, and different experiences in life can influence one's culture. The aesthetic qualities this person wanted to get was strength, joy, and humor shining through in their artwork. They proposed to do this by using soft tones, bright colors, overtly large scale subject matter, and large surreal forms as subject matter. Lastly, they're proposing to use oil pastel to be able to get bold line work, but also to create soft blended colors. They've also suggested acrylic paint with a different type of technique, which is dry on dry and dry edge, to get a rougher, messier, chaotic style. So they have this one conceptual overall possibility here, and now it's time to look at their personal experience and how they were able to develop some separate conceptual possibilities from their own personal experiences to represent their theme of culture. So now we look at the personal inspiration. This is actually a journey that I took to complete this outcome, to show you guys that it is achievable and how I got there. So in my personal experiences with culture, one we can look at here is maybe these flowers. So I'm going to read the annotations to show you two different conceptual possibilities I have developed from simply drawing on personal inspiration for my theme of culture. So this personal inspiration I have represented is a bed of growing flowers. These flowers symbolize the growth of culture within myself and show clear connection to my overall theme of culture. Since I can remember, I have pushed myself as a human being to understand the views of all cultures and traditions around the world in order to better connect with those around me. It is this feeling of growth that I get from being a part of such fruitful community of worldly cultures that I may want to portray as an aesthetic quality in order to illustrate my chosen theme of culture. So that idea of showing growth to represent my connection to culture is one conceptual possibility that I might want to show in my artwork. Down the bottom here, I have another conceptual possibility from my own personal inspiration. So this personal inspiration I've represented is an image of myself. As a first-generation Australian whose cultural ties Italian and Sri Lankan, the somewhat quiet or somewhat new cultures within the Australian landscape speaks to my overall theme of culture, or lack of, shown in my upbringing. It is this feeling of discovery that I get from being a first-generation Australian, exploring and developing my own journey, and it is this idea or conceptual possibility that I want to portray in as aesthetic quality in order to illustrate my chosen theme of culture. So we can already see, just from my personal inspiration, I have a range of conceptual possibilities that I can build on before I reach my potential directions. So next we look at the artists that will be the key inspirations behind both the subject matter, the aesthetic qualities, and the materials and techniques that I utilize when it comes to developing my final artworks. So these artists I have chosen are Reg Mombassa, who I've chosen for his materials and techniques, which are wet on dry blending using oil pastel and his subject matter, so that idea of growth and those trees there. My second one is Callan Hatanaka, Japanese artist. I've looked at his use of materials and techniques to inspire me. His use of dry on dry, so using rough textural brushstrokes to create a really different aesthetic quality to that of Reg Mombasa. Lastly, for him, his subject matter as well. So looking at breaking down those essential cultural barriers that stand before those who see themselves as first generation Australians like myself. So I may be clearly drawing on his subject matter, but as long as I reference it, that is fine. Lastly is Yu Min Jun. I'll be looking at his aesthetic qualities, so using those bold, bright, vivid colours we can see in this bottom one here to represent ideas of joy and happiness. And secondly for him, looking at how he uses scale and proportion to bring his subject matter to life. I really like this idea of a larger than life character overseeing the landscape that they live in. So that's an idea that I might be drawing on when it comes to my final or potential directions when I'm developing my concepts. Alrighty, so an exploration proposal. So literally this was used, and you have already done it, to sum up your conceptual possibilities, explaining what it is that you want to say in your artwork, what has inspired the concepts, that's both personal and artist inspiration, and lastly, how you use other artists as inspiration to develop the techniques, subject matter you'll use, the aesthetic qualities you want to develop, and ultimately your final artwork. So that is already completed. This is what everyone should have completed up to until now. And now I'm going to explain how we connect the next step back to all this research that you've done, so that we're creating a clear process of how you get to that final possibility. So the next step is collecting your subject matter. So for your subject matter, clearly lean on your personal and artist inspiration to develop the subject matter that you're going to choose. So go back, look at your personal inspiration. It is these sorts of things that you want to be developing as your subject matter. Also, look at the subject matter that has been used or how it's been used by your artist of inspiration, because you will need to show those links in your annotation. So we can see here, these are all my own photography except for one photo. So you should be taking your own photos, make sure they are nicely cropped so they can be used in a final artwork. Don't take blurry, out of focus, darkly lit photos. You want to be able to see tone and you want to be able to see form properly, okay? So we can see my pages here. The flowers clearly link back to that story of personal inspiration. These forms of myself link back to that personal inspiration of learning knowledge. These ones also clearly link back the idea of exploring culture through food, the idea of exploring culture within my own confines of my own city, and the idea of travel and thinking about my environment. So if you were to go back and read my personal inspiration, these are all clearly linking back to that. So just to read one of these annotations, these examples are in the annotation booklet, which is on Classroom. So just reading this first one, these images of flowers may be utilized to symbolize the idea of growth within my theme of culture. The resilient flowers reach towards the light, representing my own journey through my discovery of culture. With my personal experience of developing my knowledge of my own and other cultures, I hope to continue and grow and understand not only myself better, but also my fellow community members and how they see and understand the world. like artist Reg Mombassa, in this artwork by Frank Waters, we'll explore through my trial compositions on how I can portray the flowers to be reaching upward to represent the idea of growth. I'll also be looking to utilize the materials and techniques of Mombassa, seen in landscape with book learning, to capture the beauty and brightness of these flowers to represent the aesthetic qualities of joy and happiness. It is this joy and happiness that I wish to portray in my artwork to represent my theme of culture. So I've clearly explained why I have chosen this subject matter, how it's linked back to my personal experience with the theme and how it's representing that experience. And lastly, how it's linking to my artists of inspiration, both in the subject matter that they use, how they use it, and the techniques and materials that I might want to use, influenced by those artists that I've chosen for my potential directions and final artworks. Okay, so once you have done that and you've collected all the subject matter you need, remember you need to collect enough subject matter that will give you content to create 3 different potential directions, okay? So we can see here, one of my works will be focused around the flowers. One of my works will be focused around the human form using these actions. Another one will be focused around the city and food and how I interact with that to develop my culture. And that idea of travel may tie into that as well. And the idea of my environment may tie in with that idea of growth as well. So you really need to be thinking about what your potential directions may look like at this point so you can collect that subject matter. So this is the very first step in your next process that you need to do before creating any artwork. Moving forward, you should never ever be developing your artwork in your folio without these reference images, okay? At this point, we're not drawing off the top of our head. You must use reference photography. If you're getting someone else's photograph to use as a reference image, you need a web link, you need to reference the artist's name, the photographer, and the year it was taken, and the name of the photograph, okay? I've put some links up on the Google Class stream. You can only use photos from professional photographers. Absolutely no on Google Images, okay? It has to be another professional artist that you're utilizing their subject matter to help develop and portray your theme and concepts. So trials and explorations, cancelled. So from here, we would generally go on to trialing techniques, exploring and discovering those, and then figuring out which ones are going to best suit our conceptual possibilities that we want to represent. And then we would go ahead and create our possibilities, and then you would develop your final artwork.